Choosing key phrases. This is going to be a fundamental activity because this is what your audience are typing into the Google search box, and you need to figure out, if you sell small cars as an example, you need to figure out what the audience who are looking at buying a small car are most likely to search for on Google, because those are the terms you want to appear high on, or rank highly for, I should say. So we'll talk about some issues to do with choosing key phrases. The first thing that one can do is try and brainstorm, effectively. You try and brainstorm, how would people search for my product, my service? What could they be typing into the search engines in order to come up with a candidate list, a short list? And this is just intended to help prompt some thoughts around that. So this is, they're looking to compare, they're searching according to its intended use, high mileage, according to a particular type, product type or feature, such as, a very light notebook, netbook, whatever the case may be, multi-car insurance, by price, by brand, etc., etc. So you can see how this is no more than a guide in that brainstorming effort to try and think of all the ways people might be searching. And just because, I hope it doesn't need saying, just because you use a certain language or terminology to refer to your product or service does not mean that your audience share that terminology. In fact, very often they won't, because you'll be using the probably technically correct terminology, and they might be using slang, vernacular, whatever. So you need to do the research into all the different types of things people might be searching for. And we'll go on to, in a moment, to discuss tools that help you do that, that help you do this research. But for the moment, when we're talking about key phrases, this diagram here is really talking about something that's called the tail. And it's very simple. What it says is that for the majority of industries, what you have is this area here are a relatively small number of search phrases that account for a disproportionately large percentage of searches on the internet. Because people don't have that imagination, they don't have that much imagination, they don't need that much imagination. If you're searching for a small car, there's going to be a small number of words or phrases that most people will use to do that search. And these will be high volume, and that's why they're at that end. However, in theory, as you move along this scale, with fewer and fewer people using these search terms, you could say, arguably it goes into infinity, that there are any number of possible key phrases you could use to search for a product or service, but gradually they decrease in likelihood and they decrease in volume. So what we need to do is think about primarily, really, what the high volume ones are, because that almost always is going to be the ones that we're going to be interested in optimizing for, interested in doing the work on. And some industries, just so you know, are considered to be long tail industries, which is where they genuinely do have a tail that almost goes into infinity. The classic example of that is the holiday industry, because that has every city in the world, every country in the world. Then you have hotels, flats, apartments, condominiums, etc., resorts. And then you have activities, skiing, whatever else it is people do on holiday, sunbathing. So, for the holiday industry, the tail goes on forever. Other industries, such as car insurance, have a short tail, which means that realistically, there's not that many things that people are going to type into a search engine to search for car insurance, because car insurance is almost always called car insurance. There's no real other terms, and once you start thinking about it, there's only so many products or features or ways of phrasing that question. So that would be a short tail example.
When you create a key phrase, is it always just one word, or can you create a phrase with 2 words in it? How would you section that off so it was recognised separately to everything else within your...
If you had a key phrase of 3 words as an example, and within that you could imagine people running a search with only one of those words, yeah? If you're optimizing for those 3, you will optimize for that one anyway, because it's included within it.
Right.
Interestingly, the trend is for people to, when they type into a search engine, people are tending to type 2, 3, 4 words as opposed to 1. So, which makes sense, because it gives you more detail, and therefore you're more likely to get a good result back. So you would ordinarily not optimize a page for just 1 word. It would normally be 2 or 3 words that makes a phrase that is relevant to the product or service on that page. And then By default, you would also be optimizing for each one of those individual words, if anyone were to type those individual words into an engine.
Right.
Right, so you can see here how here in the head, which is the high volume bit, these tend to be quite generic, all-encompassing words or phrases. It's quite hard to rank highly for them because everyone knows in car insurance is the big term, or current account in banking, whatever the case may be. So they're very, very competitive. And you could argue they tend to be associated with early stage consumer research, where they're still researching the purchase, researching the area. You could argue again in the tail that these tend to be more specific because there are fewer people searching them. They tend to be more detailed queries. So then you could argue that these indicate a higher intent to purchase. So they'd be more likely to occur later in the purchasing cycle.